Recently, I read an article about tourists threatening to sue the Antiguan government for infringing upon their rights because the government required them to get tested for coronavirus and to quarantine upon arrival. And I couldn't believe how ridiculous, how entitled they were being to not understand that these were health and safety regulations in place to protect the people who live on that island that they want to vacation on. And that got me thinking about the relationship between tourists and locals in the Caribbean and how sometimes it feels very imbalanced. So I decided to do some research. Back in the day, the powers that be, or the powers that were, didn't stumble upon colonialism. It was intrinsically linked to the shift in society towards capitalism and mass expansion. In this world where capitalism thrives, so does colonialism, in a new way. This new colonialism is known as neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is the practice of using capitalism, globalization, cultural imperialism, and conditional aid to influence a developing country instead of the previous colonial methods of direct military control, imperialism, or indirect political control. The term was coined by ex-Ghanaian President Kwame Nkrumah, who wrote, "The result of neocolonialism is that foreign capital is used for the exploitation rather than for the development of the less developed parts of the world. Investment under neocolonialism increases rather than decreases the gap between the rich and the poor countries of the world." As a developing region, the Caribbean has seen its fair share of external development initiatives, perhaps the most notorious being the IMF loan. It's no secret that the financial aid for development that the IMF offers comes with many strings attached. Strings that require the indebted nation to submit themselves to complete integration in the global capitalist market, ignoring the specific developmental needs of the nation and coercing policy changes that lead to privatization of many industries and public services, eliminating subsidies of all kinds, and raising interest rates and cutting public services. But this is the devil that we know. There's another form of neocolonialism, one that's less critiqued. One that's actually been pitched to us as an ideal avenue for Caribbean development: tourism. Tourism in many post-colonial developing areas has grown at a reckless rate. First, you have a few intrepid tourists who discover the location. In response, the local community tries its best to adapt to the needs of their new visitors. More visits leads to articles and Instagram posts and YouTube videos, and soon the stream of niche travelers gives way to a flood. Then come the foreign investors to build up tourism infrastructure and make the location more palatable to mainstream tourists. This is how foreign interests come to dominate the tourism industries of developing countries. In that sense, it can be argued that the colonial relationship has persisted beyond independence. There continues an unfair balance of power, with island nations focused on catering to the needs of developed countries. Some would argue that tourism brings jobs and it boosts the economy, so maybe the ends justifies the means. However, the tourism industry has a persistent problem that often negates all the economic growth and prosperity promised: leakage. Leakage can be defined as the unwanted leaving of money from a country as a result of taxes, wages, imports, and profits that are paid outside the country. Developing countries experience a higher rate of tourism leakage than the rest of the world. A study conducted by the United Nations Environmental Program found that only 5 out of every $100 spent on a vacation package by an overseas traveler from a developed country stays in the developing country's economy. Across the Caribbean, tourism industry leakage averages out to 70%. 70 cents of every dollar earned is lost to outside entities. As for the jobs, well, let's look at the case of the Tobago Hilton. When it was proposed, local residents were promised jobs and increased spending in the community. Instead, Hilton International imported most of its professional workforce, leaving only very few low-skilled jobs left for residents. The resort closed off a prime beach area to local residents, and to make matters worse, was opened as an all-inclusive resort where locals would have to purchase a day pass to access the beach. With more information, it becomes clear that the advertised economic benefit of tourism doesn't always pan out as expected. In addition to the economic shortcomings, mass tourism also poses a major threat to the environment, jeopardizing the paradise that attracts tourists to our shores in the first place. An IUCN report states, landscape modification due to tourism development is believed to be one of the main contemporary drivers of habitat loss in the Caribbean. A report by the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund found that second to invasive species, residential and commercial development are considered the top threat to biodiversity in the Caribbean. Yet political leaders have often chosen short-term financial or political gain over environmental protection. In our region, we need to hold our governments accountable. We need to see the value in what we have here and not be led down a road of development that in the end doesn't benefit the actual people of the region. We must understand that the promise of jobs must not come at the cost of our biodiversity, our culture, or economic development. We need policy that promotes wealth locally, and not just jobs that serve to grow foreign companies or politicians' pockets. This part is specifically for Dominica. We don't have a lot of these problems right now. Because of our topography, our tourism product has always been closer to ecotourism than to mass tourism. The government seems to be begging for these problems with the push to expand and to build bigger resorts, one of which is being built on drained and infilled wetlands right now. There are ways to develop a more mutually beneficial tourism product. I know this because I read all of the Caribbean Tourism Association's suggestions, and the government officials know this because they were at those meetings where those suggestions were laid out. So the point is, we need to be vigilant and hold those in power accountable with the goal of sustainable tourism development. But that's what I think. The conversation can continue in the comments below or in DMs or whatever. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to me on YouTube or follow me on Instagram and share it with anyone you think might be interested.